Tonight, I would like to provide the board and the community with some updates regarding our planning efforts in the implementation of our current remote learning stage, as well as our plans for transitioning students back on site. As always, our sites are set on a safe and secure learning and working conditions for staff and students, and we are continuing to be as responsive as possible to meet the learning and support needs of all of our learners. So tonight we have some updates as well as kind of a forecasted plan for the trajectory of moving forward. As you know, we are currently in the full remote learning phase, and we are essentially moving into the stage where we are considering bringing groups of students back in a very intentional, phased, measured approach, and I'm going to speak a little bit about that this evening. We are continuing as a staff, as a team, to work very hard to do everything possible to stay connected with our kids and our families and find new and innovative ways to support. Our staff across the district are working very hard, and we know our students and our parents and our family members are as well. Every day we are troubleshooting, every day we are learning, every day we are innovating, every day we are continuing to problem solve and find challenges together. So we want to remind our community, our families, and our kids that we see you, and behind these masks, we're here for you. And we are working very hard to bring kids back on site as soon as we are fully prepared and can safely do so. So with the learning of everything that's going on with remote learning right now, we are seeing many successes, and we also see many challenges. So we are continuing to troubleshoot and problem solve together. We are still seeing a high attendance percentage rate, so we thank our families and our students for ensuring our students are attending, and we continue to work on engagement as well. And so our staff is working very hard to find new and innovative ways to ensure our kids are not just there, but they're also engaging and learning. We have a high level of engagement in our learning platforms, and we continue to troubleshoot technology issues. We know there's always going to be bumps in the road, but we are coming up with new ways to make access easier for our youngest learners, and to troubleshoot other things in terms of support for devices, non-functioning devices, and other needs that are arising. Our nutrition services team is also continuing to evolve with curbside and delivery, grab-and-go breakfast and lunch meal kits for any student or child in the Valley View community 18 and under. So as we are continuing on that track of improving every day, even though it will never be a perfect model, we're continuing to improve and do the absolute best we can, staff, students, and families. We're also preparing for on-site transitions and revising our hybrid plans. So we are currently in this stage 2 now, where we are preparing to continue remote learning and then also begin the phases of rolling in learners on site for targeted support, special programs, and bringing our staff back on site fully as well. We sent out a learning selection survey via Infinite Campus, and this the purpose of this was to help us develop modified hybrid and remote plans. And it's truly essential that we have a clear picture of how many students by grade level, by school, by special program, what the family selection is for those learners to continue in remote learning or to take a hybrid option that was available. In full transparency, I know there are community members, I know there are parents who feel frustrated with being asked to make that selection without seeing a full detailed plan, and I understand that. As a parent, I would want to know that too. But essentially why we need this information right now is to know what our families would choose for their child, whether remote or hybrid, so that we can best deliver a plan that we know that we can execute. The number of students who choose to stay remote or the number of students who want to be on campus for on-site learning very much impacts the type of schedule, the logistical challenges, the scheduling, the staffing. All of those things are very relevant. And please keep in mind, we're talking about pre-K all the way through STEP, our secondary transition program, and nearly 16,000 learners across 21 buildings. So this is quite an undertaking, and we want to be as precise and accurate in the planning phase as we can so that families and students are very clear on what does hybrid look like at a particular level, and then what changes, if any, would be made to the remote model when we reach that juncture. So early childhood, I'm going to talk about separately because they are communicating with their families, and they have a pretty high response rate of hearing back from their families, nearly 75% response rate. And so there's a certain portion of their families that they're still contacting with to determine their choice for their learners, and would they like to be on site for a half day AM or PM session for 4 days a week, or would they prefer to be full remote? And so the early childhood team is continuing to work with families, and there's very special, there's unique programming. Many different programs are taking place at early childhood on a regular basis. So the communication for our early childhood families will continue to come directly from our early childhood leaders and the team that's working on contacting families there to prepare for transitions at that level. So as a district as a whole, for K-12 and STEP, we have essentially about just under 59% response rate for making a learning selection. So what this means is the data I'm going to refer to is just of that nearly 59% sample that we have as a district. So we have an incomplete data set is what I'm telling you tonight. And what this means is that beginning today, and some as early as Friday, our schools are contacting each of those families to confirm where their child, what their choice for their child would be for remote or for the hybrid option that is available. And of that just under 60% that responded, it's almost 50-50 in terms of what families would select for their child if given the option to come to a hybrid model or to stay in remote. So we're at what's about 48.5 and 51.5. So definitely very split. And of course, this varies by level as well. At elementary level, we have a little bit higher percent response rate there with nearly 62% response. So this is just taking a glimpse into this data by level now. And of the responses that we have collected, about 50.6% of students would take the hybrid option, and 49.4% of students would stay full remote. The preference for the learning selection for hybrid was 1 to 2 days attendance on site. That's based on the data we have so far. At middle school, we have about, let's see, again, it's very close to 50-50, as you can see, and the preferred hybrid learning selection was partial half-day attendance on site. I'm sorry? We did not offer the option of 5 days. We said if this option were available for hybrid, would you select this or would you choose full remote? And the options of 1 to 2 days per week was less favorable than having partial half-day attendance on site for some number of days per week. Again, that is directly contingent on the number of students in that model and staffing. We cannot physically have all of our students on site 5 days a week. Also, keep in mind, being a unit district and having transportation in-house, half-day options have to line up across the levels because we use the same buses to transport all the different levels, as you know. So we have to look very carefully across all of the different levels to say that anything we're going to do at middle school has to allow us to transport any other levels that are in operation at that time. So just another complexity of a unit district. There's many benefits, but there's extra challenges when you're trying to do this type of planning with so many moving targets. Our high school students, a little bit more leaning toward choosing a hybrid option, and their choice was also the preference of those who selected, the hybrid was 1 to 2 day attendance days on site. And yet we do have a considerable number who did indicate that they would, at this juncture, if given the option, choose to remain full remote. And essentially, it's of the respondents we have so far, again, very close to a 50-50 split. STEP, this is a small sample set because we have a small number of students enrolled at that campus, but the majority of those that we have choice from so far are choosing a hybrid option, and they do have definitely very unique individualized programming, so that's what we'll be working toward at that level. So at this next step, we're completing our learning selection data collection. We're confirming with families. We will not just assume, although for our planning efforts, we do need to plan for the number of students, kind of the max that we would have on site. But in terms of scheduling and staffing, we want to be as accurate as possible so that we can best serve students in both models. This is a very challenging thing, as you'll see districts around us as they're making the transition to essentially keep two tracks running at the same time. And it requires a lot of creative thinking by the teams. It requires a lot of problem solving. We, of course, are looking to provide as much continuity as possible. We put a high priority on relationships. We put a high priority on connection. So as much as possible, we want to ensure that the plans that we bring to you on October 8th take all of that, and we've considered all of those variables and are doing everything possible to meet those demands. And at the same time, being realistic to what is best for students, and then what can staff truly take on top of what they're already doing, or adjust to if it's something different than what is currently in place. So as we finalize plans for the hybrid model for each of the levels, we'll be solidifying all the logistical variables regarding that so that families have a very clear picture of what to expect and when that will occur. We will be developing a roadmap for a phased transition of groups back to on-site learning, and we'll be sharing that with the Board of Education and the community on October 8th. And so what that will essentially lay out are what are the phases for the priority groups for transitioning. And so an example is self-contained programs for EC STEP, pre-K1, students with IEPs, English learners, et cetera. And we anticipate those being in the earlier phases of transition. We do have our first planned transition that is going very well in terms of planning, in terms of confirming with our families. The targeted special program return will be starting the week of October 13th. That includes multi-needs, pre-K-12 and STEP, autism and stellar programs, pre-K-5, as well as elementary cross-categorical programming. The vast majority of our families did elect for a hybrid or an on-site option, and there are some learners in those programs who did elect full remote. So the planning teams have been working very hard and will be communicating with our families beginning tomorrow regarding their specific return to on-site learning and those transitions that will occur. Our transportation team is working very hard behind the scenes as well, and they will be reaching out to families to confirm transportation arrangements between October 7th and October 9th. So for our families at home who are watching now, you can expect to get your first round of information beginning tomorrow, and then a follow-up by transportation shortly thereafter. So we're very excited, and our teams have been working very hard. We want our students back with us. We know we can best serve our students and meet their unique needs when they're on site with us. So this will be the first transition that we will begin, and then we will continue to build upon that. We, as I've been reporting in previous updates, are doing very well with implementation of staff reporting, notification, contact tracing. We're working with our county health partners for consultation or support as needed. We will be sending information out prior to transitions about the self-certification process for students, and that will be shared prior to any students transitioning back on site. And then I'm leaving in here as a reference because I do want to ensure that everyone is aware that as students transition back on site, there are still strong, very firm guidelines for self-certification and symptom screening, as well as for exclusion, meaning if a student is symptomatic or ill and not being in school, staff members as well, to minimize the risk of any transmission of COVID-19. I did want to touch quickly on the public health metrics in terms of our region and county data. We keep a very close eye on this. And a region level that includes Will County and Kankakee, there is a 7-day rolling average of 5.4%. And in Will County, so coming down a level to be more targeted in Will County, we do find ourselves at warning level for new cases, but we are on target for test positivity. And the source for this data is the Illinois Department of Public Health. And if you're viewing this online or you access this presentation on the website, you can click on that active link at the top to access this information for yourself. And this was most recently updated today. From a county level, we look at school metrics in terms of test positivity. We're doing well. New cases, we're at a moderate level. And so these are things we continue to monitor as well. And as I mentioned last time, this is even more targeted and this is even more helpful. In our immediate zip codes in Romeoville and Bolingbrook, we are doing even better. So we are looking at a rolling average of our positivity rate of 4.27%. And this is encouraging because if we continue on this path, that will make our transitions more likely to be able to occur and to occur successfully, and with strong implementation of our protocols in district and a strong commitment by our community for not only quarantining when you are ill or have a positive case or direct exposure, by also taking safety precautions with the use of masks and social distancing, hand hygiene, and ensuring that our children are also very well practiced in these routines. This will ensure that we can have a successful reopening and then also keep our doors open. In district, we continue to monitor our own metrics. What you see on the right of the screen is a snapshot of a dashboard that our team has been developing, and this will become publicly available so we can be very transparent with the community in terms of cases that are being reported in district for staff or students. So what we see right now is a representation of the current data, although we don't necessarily know all student data because families may or may not be reporting. We are asking our families to report, and there's a link on every school's homepage so that we have a very strong knowledge of which families may need support or connection to resources, but also how our homes are being impacted and how our students would be impacted in terms of having to quarantine and move into remote learning or being ready to come back, as well as staff. If there's a known positive case with a staff member needing to go into isolation or a direct exposure, symptoms needing to quarantine. So this is something that I'll continue to present to the board and the community, and it'll also be accessible on our webpage. So as I mentioned, we will be having a special meeting on October 8th. At that time, you can expect that we will have the targeted timeframes for each of the transitions for groups of learners or particular levels. And we will have the recommendations from our planning teams in terms of what does a hybrid model look like for each particular level and when can we successfully begin that transition for that particular level. We will continue to update our website. We have a family resource webpage update with a lot of quick links to very valuable resources with our community partners. And we are very excited to begin these transitions and welcome our special programs back the week of October 13th.